Library Out Loud updates you all about the fun and interesting things going on in the Spokane County Library District. Sponsored by STCU and the Spokane County Library District.
Hello and welcome to Library Out Loud. I'm Jane Baker. It's another social distancing edition of the program. Thanks for joining us today. And with me for our discussion this morning is Rachel Edmondson. She is an early learning librarian with the Spokane County Library District, and also Sheri Boggs, a youth development collection librarian with the district. Did I get both your titles right?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, ladies, for joining me today. It's good to see you. It seems like it's been a long time since I've seen you face to face. And of course, we're not the only ones. And we have a lot of interesting challenges going on with early learning with the kids at home, and summer just around the corner. And what are we going to do with the kids at home all summer when they've been home for a couple months already? So today we're going to talk about some of those ideas and whatever else comes up. So let's start with you, Rachel. You have a couple children at home, so you are right in the mix of what's going on with having kids at home, also trying to be a parent, trying to be a teacher, trying to work. How's it going in your house?
It's going pretty well. It's had its ups and downs, but I think we're finally kind of in a routine, which is nice. Kind of know what we're doing each day, and we definitely like it when it's sunny so they can go outside. It makes the day go much better when they can go out and ride their bike for a while and run around. And when it's rainy, it's a little more challenging to keep them entertained after they're done with school. But yeah, working, teaching, doing life.
So remind me quickly the age of your kids.
So I have a daughter who actually just turned 8, and then a 10-year-old.
10. Wow.
Yes.
Those are busy ages. So are you trying to keep a regular routine, a regular school routine? Are you getting information from the schools? Can you tell me a little bit about how that's going?
Yeah, so it's kind of changed a little bit as it went. The first couple of weeks were a little crazy, and now it's a little bit more settled down. There's a lot of different resources you can use from the schools. So we're at Spokane Public Schools. So they have a lot of online resources that you can use, as well as what the teachers are sending out. We've mostly been working with what our daughter's teachers have been sending. So we do have a little bit of a routine. Usually we, have our normal morning routine and breakfast and hang out and relax a little bit. And then we do our first official hour of school at 9. And part of that's because my oldest has a Zoom session with her class at 9 o'clock. And then we give them a break. They get a snack, run around a little bit. And then we do our second session. We try and do most of the more intentional schoolwork in the morning, and just kind of get them done and focused in the morning, and then they can be less focused and play in the afternoon. We take a pretty large lunch break after that, and then my oldest has a Zoom meeting again at 2 o'clock. And my youngest has one 2 days a week, also at 2 o'clock. So they kind of turn in anything they need to turn in and check in with their classes if they want to, and then we're done for the day. So we at most do about 2 hours of actual homework, and then we have some time that we call creative learning, which means Legos or pluses, or they've been writing a lot of letters to their friends and their grandparents, and we count that as school because they're writing and learning where the stamp goes. We kind of forget that a lot of our kids haven't learned those skills, right? Because they're doing FaceTime with their grandparents, or they're talking on the phone, and letter writing isn't as much of a thing. So they've had a lot of fun learning letter writing. So So yeah, we try and kind of do 2 hours of very, specific schoolwork, and then the rest is kind of fun learning and playing.
Wow. So, what is your biggest challenge?
At the beginning, it was trying to figure out how to get everybody time to get what they needed to get done. So, both my husband and I are working from home. And so, we've had to set some specific times where one of us is in charge versus the other. So, the kids know the new phrase is, "Are you the interruptible parent right now?" Which is really funny and cute. So we take turns being the interruptible parent, and that has helped us both be able to get our work done as well. But before that, it was definitely a challenge, just the constant interruption and trying to focus enough to get work done
Sure.
was probably the trickiest part for a while there.
Wow. Wow. Well, lots of kudos to you and parents who are trying to work and do this at the same time. It sounds like you've gotten it really organized. So today we're talking about some things that the kids can do, some activities that the kids can do. And Rachel, you have a lot of great ideas. And Sheri, we've pulled you in because you also have a lot of great ideas. Um, so, Sheri, after hearing what Rachel just said, and knowing what your job is, what is the first thing that you want to do to help people like Rachel?
Well, short of being able to go help,
Mhm.
we've got a lot of great books in our Overdrive collection. Overdrive is our digital book provider, and we've got some fantastic picture books for kids right now, and we also have a ton of activity books. Um, like everything from origami to how to make slime, um, lots of kind of STEM activities that you can do, bird identification books. We've got tons of stuff.
That sounds great. Rachel, so what kind of ideas do you have to keep the kids active? I know, like I said, summer's just around the corner. Hopefully the weather gets nice real soon. What kind of activities and ideas do you have to share with parents?
Yeah, so a while back, I put together a blog post that had ideas a little bit aimed towards kids a little bit younger than mine, although some of them would definitely include my kids as well. But I find the greatest thing about the outdoors is doing all of those messy activities that you tend to avoid because you don't want to have to clean your house up afterwards.
Mhm.
So whether for you this means Play-Doh, some families don't mind doing Play-Doh inside. Some can't stand trying to pick Play-Doh out of the carpet. So outside is a great place to do Play-Doh. Like Sheri mentioned, slime is a great thing to make outside. There's so many different types of slime. There's also a lot of different types of play materials like doughs and sensory. There's a website called Grow a Jeweled Rose that has so many different ideas of fun, creative things you can make, like cloud dough and snow dough and glitter dough. And if you can think of it, they probably have a recipe up there to try. So I tend to think of the messy things. Also, for young kids, sensory is such a big thing. So some sort of sand table or water table. What I love to tell people is you don't have to go out and buy one of the expensive sand or water tables. You can get really creative with what you have. So any sort of plastic storage bin can work great for that. If you have a kiddie pool, that's smaller, you can use that. If you still have your baby bathtub sitting around, that's a great one because it's a little bit lower and a good size. So you can just get really creative. One idea I thought was really fun is kids love to play in the mud, but you don't necessarily want your yard to turn into a mud pit. So you can treat that the same way as you do a sand or water table. Create a mobile mud pit. One person even said they used their wheelbarrow because then they could move the mud pit around while they were
Oh, that's a
gardening. So
great idea.
kids could play in the mud wherever they were. So I tend to go to messy first. There's tons of other messy ideas out there. And then I also tend to go to water play a lot. There's some really fun things you can do with water. Simply put out water and then like measuring cups. Kids love to measure and play around with those math and science skills of measuring and how much fits and what sinks and what will float. You can freeze toys in ice and then let kids excavate them. Give them toys that they can try and chip the ice to get to the toy, or you can give them salt water and let them spray that on the ice and see how regular water versus salt water will melt the ice. So that's something that a lot of people have done that kids really enjoy. Water balloons are a good activity that lots of kids love, but they're a pain. Most parents kind of dread water balloons because you have to pick up all the pieces afterwards. So if you buy really cheap sponges, the ones that don't have the rougher side for scrubbing things, use a sponge. It works just as well, and it's so much easier to pick up a bunch of sponges than it is to pick up water balloons. There's also cute ideas where you can cut them into strips and then tie them together to make kind of a sponge ball. So yeah, my first go-to tends to be messy and water.
Well, that sounds like some great ideas. Actually, the idea of freezing a toy and excavating it, I kind of want to do that myself. So those are great. And it sounds like a little bit of science in there. Do you get a chance to talk about that at the same time? Why is this working, or why is this not working? Or
Yes, any sort of sensory play is great for science exploration. The biggest thing with young kids, when you're talking like preschool age and science, is asking questions, just helping them to think that way instead of just assuming things. Why does this work? Or what do you think would happen if you did this? Or what else could we try? So focusing a lot on open-ended questions that make them think about the world around them and what they're doing, and kind of help them think about new ways to do things and explore is really the best way to do science with preschoolers and with older kids too, honestly. I find that we don't always stop and ask kids open-ended questions, especially when we're busy. It's just so much easier to kind of just get those one-word answers or to kind of move things along. So when you do have time to slow down, it can be amazing how much kids will talk if you ask them open-ended questions.
no, those are some great tips. The libraries, we're closed right now, but we are working on getting open, actually probably a little sooner than we originally thought, which is a good thing. So when we come back, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk more, Sheri and Rachel, about some of the things that the library has, some of the books. I know that, Sheri, you've been busy ordering lots of new stuff, and we'll come back in a few minutes and talk about that. So hang in there with us, and we'll be right back on Library Out Loud.
What? You haven't been to the library lately? Stop in today and see that the library is more than books. Spokane County Library District facilities feature on-site technology, including Wi-Fi, computers, and printers, as well as free use of meeting rooms. The Library District offers events and programs for all ages, from story times to career development and employer classes to Social Security workshops. Our staff is well trained and happy to help. Find out more about your library at scld.org.
I'm Jade Becker, and I'm a senior at Chewilla High School. I'm at STCU's Money Live event. In this scenario that we played today, I was a realtor. My spouse was a city worker. We had an 11-month-old child, and there was a lot of spending for that child, like diapers and formula, and had to buy toys and clothing. I'm very glad that I had this experience. It was super helpful. You need this to get far and ahead in life. I'm Jade Becker, and STCU is here for good.
And welcome back to Library Out Loud. I'm Jane Baker with the Spokane County Library District. Joining me today is our Youth Development Collection Librarian, Sheri Boggs, and also early learning librarian, Rachel Edmondson. And we're talking about things to do with the kids, especially with summer just around the corner, to have a little fun, squeeze in a little learning, do all those type of things that you like to do in the summertime. And of course, the library is always here to help. Sheri, talk about some of the things that you have been doing. You've been ordering and getting onto the shelves at the library. I can't wait to hear about this.
Okay. Well, because we've been closed, we've been kind of funneling more funds into our digital offerings. And so we've been ordering twice a week for that, to make sure we have plenty of stuff for people. I just ordered the new Hunger Games prequel that just came out. So we have that in both audiobook and ebook, and there are a ton of holds. So I'm just ordering more copies of that. And then when we reopen, I'm trying to make sure we have enough physical copies of things. We haven't been closed, but both the adult selector and I are kind of keeping these huge lists of stuff that we'll be getting in when we're able to be open to the public again. Yeah.
So on the digital, you say, is that through Overdrive?
Yes, it is.
All right. So lots of books and picture books. Are there some of them that are read that you can listen to? Is that on Overdrive as well?
Oh yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I made a list of family-friendly reads, because I think sometimes with families all hanging out together, it's hard to find something that like everybody wants to listen to if you're not lucky enough to have a device for every kid. And so these are things that I pick that kind of have like broad age appeal, and that I think adults and even older kids might enjoy as much as the younger kids. So yeah, that's great. And then we also have some of the picture books on Overdrive have like a read along function. And so you can choose to turn on the audio. And that's really great for kids learning how to read.
Sure.
And they don't have to have a parent nearby to help them with that.
And what kind of titles are we talking about? What should we be looking for on Overdrive?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know like if you go to our Overdrive page, and I think you can type in read along, or it might be there's a way to filter on the it's really hard without it right in front of me, but there's a way to filter on the left side, and I think that's an option you can choose. So there's
great. So
yeah,
search for that. Yeah, that's great. And if anybody's listening who doesn't have a library card, you can apply for those right online, be approved instantly right now. And it's great that the district has opened up that option, so you don't need to come to the library to get a library card. You can get online right away and start accessing some of this great stuff that you've been working on getting in to keep the kids learning and occupied through the summer. I want to go to Rachel now. Rachel, what kind of things do you have planned, activities do you have planned for your kids for the summer?
Yeah, so it's kind of a moving target, right? So some of the things we have planned are no longer planned, and some we're waiting to see. We've been doing a lot of bike riding, so that's been kind of their new go-to activity. My oldest got into longboarding, so that's been interesting to watch. She made me try. That was not pretty, so I will not be longboarding. We like to go on hikes when we can go. So we've done that a few times and just made sure we kind of kept our distance from people. Gardening is something that my girls have gotten into, mostly with their dad. My thumb is not green, but they have a lot of fun with that. And there's actually a lot of different things you can do with kids in the garden. You can give them their own space in a raised bed if you have a raised bed. You can do container gardening with kids, so they have their own little container. We actually have several books on Overdrive that are specific to gardening with kids. And there's a pretty good variety. So there is one about square foot gardening, container gardening, organic. And then there's also several books that have great ideas of activities and crafts that you can do related to the garden, whether it's stuff to attract bees or butterflies, or making like a garden marker, this is the corn, that kind of stuff. A lot of them use recyclable materials, so that's great. You don't necessarily have to make a trip to the craft store to do some of the activities. For the younger ones, and actually my kids are working on measurement too, you can measure all sorts of things in the garden. So then you're doing a little math at the same time, help them measure how far apart you have to plant the seeds, how far apart the rows have to be. My girls always like to plant one of those huge sunflowers and watch it grow throughout the summer. They kind of know the trick now, but the first year we asked them to predict whether it would get taller than them or not. And they just were amazed when it got a lot taller than them because they were pretty little at the time. So you can measure that throughout the summer. So there's actually a lot of math in the garden also. So that's kind of fun. Now, while they're still in school, you can kind of tie it in. And then once school is out, you still just can have a lot of fun watching things grow. One really fun, smaller thing you can do for kids if you're new to gardening is to make what they call a pizza garden. So if you Google pizza garden, you'll see all sorts of ideas about it, and you can go bigger or smaller. But the general idea is you might plant one tomato plant, one oregano plant, one basil plant, and then you can help your kids make their own pizza. So it's interactive and fun. So we will definitely be doing a lot of gardening in our house. Trying to think of what other plans we have. I kind of just think of stuff as I go. Running through the sprinklers. They like to put under the swing set so they can swing through the sprinklers. So they get creative. And actually, that's one thing that's good to remember. As much as it's fun to think of these new ideas and activities to do, it's actually really important for kids to have free play time. And the research is showing that kids aren't getting as much of that as they used to. But suddenly we're in this time where they have more time for that, right? So they aren't going to soccer practice. So there's a whole chunk of time where they can have free play instead of organized play. And they learn different things when they're doing free play than when they're doing organized play. So don't be afraid to just send them in the backyard and kind of force them to come up with what they're going to do. So there's all sorts of research on the importance of nature and kids getting out in nature. So I could go on about that, but if that interests you, you could also, there's a book called Last Child in the Woods that has a lot of that information in there if you're really curious to learn more about nature and kids and how important that is. So.
Oh, those are great ideas. I want to come hang out with you and your kids because it sounds like a lot of fun. I remember, and of course I'm much older, but I do remember when I was younger, and I didn't have a lot of structured time. I had more of that kind of upbringing that you were talking about, not going to different soccer things. But I remember summer being the time to read, and I was a big reader, which may explain why I work at the library too. But it was just I just wanted to read and read and read and read. And I always chose books that were way above my level that I should have been reading at. Was that a good thing? Obviously, I think I turned out okay, but is that a good thing for kids, or should we keep them in the age group that the books are recommended for? What is your opinion on that? Both of you on this one.
So I'll start if you want. I think that whatever book the kid is motivated to read, give them a shot at it. They may not be successful, but if they see a book and they really want to read it, I don't think we say no. We say, well, let's give it a try. And maybe that turns into a book that you read together. So they try it. So I'm thinking of all those kids that really wanted to read Harry Potter, but Harry Potter's a pretty hard reading level. but they were
Mhm.
really motivated because all of their friends were reading it. So they might stick with that book longer than they normally would.
Ah,
However, I also think you want to make sure they do have some materials at their reading level because otherwise it gets discouraging, right? So
mm,
you
mhm,
want to give them a chance to succeed.
mhm,
And I like to tell people who are always wanting to challenge their friends or they don't want them to read whatever book they consider too fluffy. Would you be a reader if every single time you picked up a book, it had to be Moby Dick?
mm.
There's nothing wrong with Moby Dick, but let's be honest, some of us want to occasionally pick up Dan Brown or John Grisham or Nora Roberts, right? There's just something about being able to just soak into a book and just go without having to really work at it that is freeing. And I think we need to give our kids a chance to do that too. They
Mhm,
need their summer reads also. So I
mhm,
think that giving them that feeling of success is really important, especially in the beginning when they're learning to read. It's really an accomplishment when they can get through a book all on their own at the beginning. Um, so I kind of go for a mix with my kids. I try and make sure they have a lot around that's at their reading level that is going to just be fun for them to read. And then if there's something harder that they want to read and they're motivated for it, then we go for it and just see what happens.
mm.
So that's kind
Sounds
of
great.
the approach I've taken.
Mhm.
I would agree with
Sherry.
what Rachel was saying. Yeah, I particularly I'm thinking of graphic novels. Like that seems to be one where sometimes parents will feel like that's not a real book, um, and they're fantastic for both being a motivating thing for kids to read, and for learning how to decode text. Like with graphic novels, there's this element of understanding what's happening in the panels and um, seeing the word bubbles for each character that helps kids understand how language works in a text. So they're fantastic. I agree with everything Rachel's saying. And what you were saying, Jane, about reading way above your level when you were young, I was that kid too. And my parents, they didn't check anything that I was reading. I was reading things like V.C. Andrews and the National Enquirer. And,
Mhm,
um,
mm.
I don't know what my point with that is, but you can read way above you and still turn out fine, I guess.
We're okay, right? That's great. Well, it's going to be an interesting summer for parents and kids, and I thank you both for joining me today and giving some tips, some great ideas. And I'm going to be heading over to your house when we get a chance to do that, Rachel, because I want to join in with your kids on some of this stuff. Sounds like fun. So thank you both for joining us today. Rachel's blog and Sheri's blog also on the scld.org website. You can read about all the great things that both these ladies do on the website there and learn more. For Library Out Loud, I'm Jane Baker. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Ask the host a question, recommend a guest, or check out any of our other programs on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com. Sponsored by the Spokane County Library District and STCU.